I am so pleased to be able to bring Tracy to you tonight. I had the pleasure of meeting her last year when her organization, Heal the Bay, was doing a tour of Westwood Greenway, which some of you know I'm involved with that organization as well. And it's a cool habitat place and that we've participated with before. And Tracy was super friendly and her group was awesome. And it was really nice to interact with them. And then I went and did some reading about her and I was even much more impressed. And we at Climate Reality, we're always dealing with building collaborations and finding other organizations. And we encounter a lot of these NGOs, and a lot of the people who are chosen to be the CEOs, the head of NGOs, they are basically people that they chose because they're really good at fundraising, and that's kind of their background. And that's cool, and that's awesome. But it's really nice when an NGO picks somebody who has a science background and really gets why we're doing all this and has something valuable to contribute. That's Tracy Quinn. So she has worked at the Natural Resources Defense Council. She is an engineer by trade and by education, heavily involved in water issues and in designing different reclamation projects and things to do with basically the core issues and getting her hands dirty in the actual work. And Tracy, thank you so much for coming tonight. It's a real pleasure to have you, and we couldn't be more delighted to have you as what we're doing here tonight.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me to be on this call. It's really exciting to get to meet the group from Climate Reality LA. What you're doing is so important. It really is going to take all of us to make sure that we can adapt to this changing climate that we're seeing, and that we can fight to make sure that we can stave off the worst of it as long as we can. So it's so exciting to see so many of you show up on a Sunday evening to talk about these important issues. So thank you for having me.
And thank you for coming. And we will have an even larger audience with our recording. So this will go out, and we really appreciate you sharing with us. Tell our members a little bit about Heal the Bay for those who are maybe less familiar with it, and what your kind of core mission is. And I'd also be interested in hearing how you personally see the organization going forward in terms of what it's doing.
Absolutely. So Heal the Bay is an environmental group that's based here in Los Angeles. It's been functioning for about almost 40 years now. And our mission is to protect and restore the coastal waterways and watersheds, and obviously beautiful Santa Monica Bay. And we do that through sort of three core models. One is through science and advocacy. So we have several PhDs and super smart scientists on my staff. And we work to advance policies towards our mission. We also do a community engagement and community science. So we're probably most well known for our beach and neighborhood cleanups. And we also have an MPA Watch program, and we collect a lot of important data through that. And then finally, we work to inspire the next generation that's going to help us to answer these important questions and deal with these incredible issues. And we do that by educating about 10,000 kids a year from the greater LA area. About 70% of them are from Title I schools. Many of them have never been to the beach before. And we do our programming at the aquarium that we run underneath the Santa Monica Pier. To your second question, kind of where do I see Heal the Bay going under my background is in climate adaptation and water policy. So I would love to see Heal the Bay embrace our work around ensuring that we have a safe, reliable, and affordable supply of water for every Angelino. That will be core to our work. We're going to be working under 4 core pillars going forward. So climate adaptation is one of them. The other is public health. Public health is what we were founded on, making sure that no day at the beach should make anyone sick. We'll continue that work, expanding throughout the watershed. Biodiversity, I was really inspired by my meeting with you, Charles, and the work that's being done on the Westwood Greenbelt, and learning a lot more about biodiversity. So, a lot of our biodiversity has focused on banning single-use plastics. We'll be looking to expand that a little bit more. We're doing more and more work around how to incorporate biodiversity into our nature-based solutions. Obviously, it is one of the key benefits of nature-based solutions. So really making sure that those benefits are seen. And then finally, equity and environmental justice. You can't do this work without understanding that low-income communities and communities of color are going to be are already seeing and have already seen the worst of our environmental misdeeds, and that systematic racism and all of those things have played into that. And so working to see how Heal the Bay can play a role both externally in the work that we do, making sure that we're focused on an equitable and just future, and also looking inwards on how can we create a more inclusive organization.
The recent climate models that I've seen for Los Angeles suggest that as climate is changing, Los Angeles in the future is not really destined to have much less rain, but we're going to get around the same amount of rain, but in fewer, more severe events. And at least that's what I've read, and in terms of the studies I've read. And to me, that underscores more than ever the importance of stormwater capture. And especially when we just had this crazy rain that we just had in a time of the year when we never have it, that's on everybody's minds. And I know that's key to work you've done. And for those who don't know, Tracy's also on the board of the Metropolitan Water District. And that's certainly something they talk about and are interested in. So I'm curious of if you could give us some insight in what you see going forward on that issue. And also if you could dovetail that into how does a group like Heal the Bay or a group like Climate Reality, that's an advocacy group, how do we play a role in that when most of those decisions are really just made by government entities that sometimes lack some transparency and sometimes are not up for big votes on the issues and that they're deciding about. So how do we play a role in that? And what do you see as our mission on things along those lines?
Well, it's a really big question.
Yeah, I'm sorry, parse it out if you need to. But yeah.
I'm gonna start by just taking it, up to the 30,000 foot a little bit. And, I'm sure many of you know that Los Angeles gets the majority of its water from outside of its service area. So the Metropolitan Water District is the wholesale water provider for all of Southern California, for the 19 million people who live in Southern California. And Met imports water from the northern Sierra Nevada and from the Colorado River. In both of these systems, the water is from snowmelt. And what we know from climate change is that much like our rain, the snow that we're going to get is going to be, we may, at least on the Colorado, we may see the same total amount of snow over a 10-year period, but it's going to come in just a few years. And the total amount of snowmelt is going to be significantly less. So we've designed this system so that the snow that we get in these beautiful mountain regions melts slowly over the spring, fills up our reservoirs, and then we use it during the summer. That's when our peak water use is, because more than half of our drinking water is going for landscape irrigation, and then 80% of the total water use is going for agricultural use. So those big water uses during the summer. And then, we can use that through the fall, and then we get rains and we get our next set of snow. And that's the kind of system we've built. But climate change is showing us that the snow is coming earlier, and then it's getting really hot and it's melting so fast that we can't capture it all. It's melting early, so we need to stretch that for a longer period of time. All of that means that we can't rely on this system that we've built. It's no longer makes sense. We need to look at what we have available to us locally. And that's where stormwater capture comes in. I think stormwater capture, for me, there's no silver bullet to, obviously to climate adaptation, but I feel as though stormwater capture is the closest thing that we have. With stormwater capture, we can not only prevent pollution, which is a huge issue, but we can help to ensure we have a more reliable supply. So whether that's capturing that water on a small parcel, keeping that in our own soils, on our own properties, making sure that We don't need as much supplemental irrigation for our landscapes. And hopefully if we have a ton of natives, we don't need a lot of supplemental irrigation at all. It can also provide flood mitigation. So when those rains do come, it kind of helps us to make sure that we're not flooding. It can help to address heat island impact if you're doing it the right way. We're not going to see this extreme heat. Hopefully we have got more trees like you're going to give away today. And I would also just mention for those of you that don't know, the Metropolitan Water District is now offering $100 for tree rebates, $100 per tree if you tear out your lawn and you're going to do a landscape renovation. So share that with all of your friends. This is going to be a game changer for making sure that we can address extreme heat while we're also addressing water reliability. And, really that, there's sort of all of the things that we see that are going to impact Los Angeles can be addressed with, many of the things that we're going to see can be addressed with stormwater capture if we do it right. And then obviously, yeah, if we're planting natives, that we can also increase the biodiversity or help to stave off some of that biodiversity loss that we're experiencing. So stormwater capture can really be this, silver bullet type project if we do it right. And for that, many of you, I'm sure if you've heard Andy Lipkiss speak, he's been and I see Melanie Winter on here, and no one knows more than Melanie probably about this stuff. But we get enough rainwater here to be locally reliant if we were to capture it and use it wisely. So we've polluted our groundwater aquifers. And so we haven't been able to capture it and infiltrate it. Now we're cleaning those up. So there is a bright future for our water reliability if we continue on this path and if we do it well. We've passed Measure W, which provides almost $300 million for stormwater capture projects. We've seen that maybe it hasn't been as effective in its startup phase, and now there's this opportunity to pivot to make sure that going forward we're being more thoughtful and strategic about how we're building these projects and really understanding how the cumulative impact these projects can have. But stormwater capture is huge and really needs to be a place where we're investing from and co-funding from all the different benefits that we're going to see from stormwater capture.
One of the things I've seen some frustration on within the environmentalists, advocates, those of us who are tree huggers and those types, is that a lot of that money tends to go toward giant concrete projects that are about capturing massive things in big infrastructure type projects. When, there's an argument to be made that a lot of this stuff would be more effective if we had many curb cuts and more swales and things like that, and using more nature-based solutions that necessarily wouldn't have to cost as much as well. We just have to rethink about the way we do planning and changing some codes here and there. And so I'm curious about your perspective on that.
I absolutely think that we need distributed stormwater capture, and that there needs to be funding going towards that. I think you're absolutely right. I know that, my organization and many others have provided feedback on Measure W that, they're missing a huge opportunity by just putting stormwater capture in existing parks or looking for those larger projects rather than, trying to increase the green space, trying to look at how we can address some of the multiple issues that we're going to see with climate change. But absolutely, and I think, Metropolitan Water District is looking at how can they think about stormwater capture. We've done some pilot projects. Obviously, Met has a history of providing a lot of money towards distributive infrastructure, primarily with landscape transformation, but could certainly play a role in getting funding towards those types of distributed infrastructure. But we've really got to figure out how to do that now. And I think Measure W funding should absolutely be going towards those projects.
What do you see the positive role for a group like ours, a group like Heal the Bay, in terms of facilitating these things? How can we collaborate? How can we what do you foresee as a lane of opportunity that might exist on an issue like this?
Well, I think just being on the Met board, I'm going to start there. The Metropolitan has a $2 billion budget, the Metropolitan Water District. We have committed about $40 million a year towards water efficiency projects. We'll have budget, hopefully, for stormwater capture, but we don't get a lot of public engagement at our meetings. Sierra Club will show up, and a handful of other folks, but there aren't a lot of people that are showing up and sharing with the board what they would like us to invest in. We're really lucky that we have a general manager who has taken the focus off just being having the blinders on and focusing on building Delta conveyance and spending $15 billion to do that, and really thinking about what do we need to do in our own service area? What can we do here to make sure that we are climate resilient, that we have locally, that we have reliable local supplies. And so getting folks to show up and to tell the board that that's where we need to be focusing our time and effort and money is really important. I think when we have, you guys, I heard you speak earlier at the beginning of your meeting about legislation. Those of you that are advocates know that, sometimes it's just a handful of phone calls that can sway someone into taking action or to voting on legislation. So, picking up the phone and calling an office is really important. I would say absolutely continue to engage. So, and I've also found Supervisor Horvath's office to be really open to hearing about how we can change Measure W. And so I would absolutely recommend folks from this group reaching out to Supervisor Horvath or Erin Ordauer, her environmental person, and talking about the need, how do we do this? What does it look like? And I think, you guys know this, you're experts in this, but the easier you can make it with specific recommendations, this is how you do it, this is who should fund it, this is what the agency that should be in charge, the more likely it's going to have a chance of happening. And so I think that we are really lucky right now to be at a time in LA County between, the supervisor's office with Metropolitan Water District, and having Adele in charge and a Dawn as our board chair. We've never been in a better situation to make change on this larger regional scale than we are right now. We also have unprecedented funds coming from the federal government with the Inflation Reduction Act and the Bipartisan Infrastructure Plan. Obviously, it's a drop in the bucket for what we need for water infrastructure, but it's still $54 billion coming towards water. So, we need a lot of that money is going to be directed towards major recycled water projects, which we need. But I think being able to make the case that it's cost effective to be able to do this distributed infrastructure is going to be really important. There's also some really exciting things happening with debt financing. So this is really wonky, but it's something I'm really excited about right now, which is, a lot of this distributed infrastructure hasn't water agencies haven't tried to apply the same funding mechanisms that they do for their big infrastructure projects with debt financing. They haven't sought to use the state revolving fund or, those other things. It's newer that we're thinking about stormwater capture and water efficiency funding this way. And so if we, the studies that are coming out that are looking at using debt financing for these projects are showing it can be incredibly cost effective. You can get a much bigger bang for your buck than you do on the typical gray infrastructure if you invest that same way in nature-based solutions. So I'm really excited, if folks want to learn more about that, Heal the Bay is hosting our One Water Day on September 22nd. There'll be two panels. One of them is the general managers of all of the water, wastewater, flood control, public work agencies in LA County. The other one, I'm going to bring together experts from across the state on financing and how are we going to pay for this and what should we be funding. And so I invite you all to join us on September 22nd if you're interested in learning more about these issues.
Is that something that we could attend virtually, or is it?
It's in person. It is in person. It's on the beach, being true to our brand at Heal the Bay, on September 22nd in the morning.
Okay. And anybody can register for that at your website, I assume?
Yes, go to healthebay.org and we have registration, and I can also provide a link to Charles to share. Cool,
that would be awesome. Transition a little bit now, if we could. I would like to, one of the things that's just a huge issue that is historically tied to the mission of Heal the Bay. plastics, microplastics, in our watershed and ultimately in our oceans, and just ultimately ending up in life everywhere. And we don't have a great solution for that. A lot of it requires producer accountability, which is, we can do beach cleanups all day long and they're cool and they're great and they do matter. But unless we change the system, it's kind of like, the doctor that addresses the symptoms and never addresses the disease. And I'm curious what Heal the Bay thinks about moving forward on producer accountability, and how we're going to keep fighting the plastics fight and turn the corner on it.
Yeah, it's a tough issue. You're right. This is not going to be solved with beach cleanups. We're never going to be able to address it. And, as much incredible technology is being invented to try, with the ocean, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm losing the ocean cleanup thing in Playa del Rey and
yeah, the big
things.
catch machine.
Yeah.
I don't
And,
remember what it's called either, but it's really cool looking, right? It's like, yeah.
Yeah, catching it at the end is not the solution. We have to stop it from the beginning. So it's really, LA City did 3 really great ordinances at the end of last year, banning single-use plastics. The county has as a single-use plastics reduction ordinance. Obviously SB 54 passed last year with Senator Allen. We need to stop it where it starts. So, these things are small bites at the apple where we're trying to chip away at the plastic that's entering the system. We really need a wholesale change. I think that's going to come with changing the market. It's going to be market driven to some degree of people not wanting those things, which is challenging because plastics are convenient. But I think we really have to regulate ourselves also out of this problem. We need to stop putting single-use plastics into the market, into the system. So, I wish there was an easy answer, and I wish I'd been working on this longer so that I could share with you a master plan. But I think other than passing legislation that's going to keep single-use plastics out of our environment, out of the market, there's not much that we can do to keep microplastics out of our food and out of our bodies. I'm really excited to see that, that the state now has testing protocols for how we can test for microplastics in water. We're moving forward in that direction so we can kind of get a better grasp on what we all know the problem to be and to have the data to support it. But moving forward, we just really need to get those plastics out of our system.
Yeah. I threw you a question that I know no one has a magic answer to, but I appreciate that you did your best with it. I want to wrap up here in my end of it and open this up in a few minutes to our audience, because I know there's a lot of people interested in talking with you tonight. But I'd like to just kind of spin a little bit away from the mission just of your organization and ask you a more personal question that I tend to ask the people that I do the interview with, and that is, what is it that you use to keep yourself motivated? Because when we work in this kind of field, it's not a field that's, certainly there are more financially rewarding fields to work in. Certainly there are more higher profile jobs that you could work in. But this is an industry or an area, a group, whatever you want to call it, where we get told no a lot, and we are constantly fighting a battle, and we believe that we're on the right side of things, but the right side of things has much less money backing it up than the wrong side often. And so personally, we as advocates, I feel, always benefit to hear the story of someone who's out there and, neck deep in the battle and still has to find ways to deal with all those no's and continue that battle. So what do you do to keep yourself engaged and to keep a good positive energy going forward in what you do?
Wow, that's a great question. I've been doing this work for a really long time now, and it's not easy. There was especially sometimes at NRDC, because we worked on so many issues, and I got to see all of the different, all of the different ills of the world, from my colleagues that working on air quality. I worked on PFAS issues at NRDC, working on toxics and all these that is certainly a challenge. And I'm really glad that you asked this question. I grew up in Orange County. I grew up in Anaheim, and it wasn't close to the beach, but every once in a while my mom would take me. And it just felt like a really magical place. And, I would dive into the water and pretend to be a gymnast as the waves would flip me over. And, I felt a connection to the ocean and to the water like nothing I'd ever felt. And I wanted to protect that. I wanted to know that that future generations are going to get to experience this magic. And so I would say it's sort of my answer is twofold. One, I always make sure to take time in nature. All of my vacations are usually planned around hikes in beautiful locations, and reminding me why I do the work that I do. And then the second thing is that I believe that we have the solutions, we have the answers to at least make the world a better place for longer. Obviously, we're already seeing horrible impacts of climate change now, but there's still moments of beauty. Most of the moments I think are of beauty. This natural world is incredible. And knowing that I can wake up every morning and do something to preserve this gorgeous planet keeps me hopeful. And getting wins every once in a while also certainly helps.
Absolutely. The occasional win fuels you like nothing else. That's definitely true. So thank you for that. I know we have some people who are interested in asking some questions, so I'm going to open it up at this time. If you could do your little raise your digital hand thing, and we'll get a little cue going. But I'm going to start with Karen because you already submitted some questions to me, and they were very specific, so I didn't incorporate them into my interview. But if you want to ask maybe a question to start us off, Karen.
Yes, I can. Hi, thank you so much for having this. This is wonderful to listen. And yeah, so I'll keep it short, or as short as I can. I'm really interested in what we can do with the water that's being channeled into the ocean so quickly with these the LA riverbeds. And I live near a soft bottom where there is no concrete underneath here in Atwater, but I'm curious if there could be money spent on digging up all these channels so that the water can go into the ground underneath. And then on the next question was, what about installing solar on top? I know that's not a water question, but that seems like a very good place. So that's one question I have. I have a few more.
Sure. Yeah, I think going back to sort of the history of LA and why we have channelized the LA River, and why we've built into the floodplain. Many of you probably know there was a huge flood, and we built up Los Angeles, a huge flood in 1930, and we decided, and I'll take, I'm an engineer, so I'll take some of the hit for it, even though I clearly wasn't around in the 30s. Well, we just got to take this nuisance and get it out as quickly as possible. And we know now that was a huge mistake. So now what we need to do is to undo the past. I think, unchannelizing the river is, I think, what many of us would certainly like to see. But I think that it's a challenge to do that first. I think what we can do more easily is to try to keep some of that water out of the river and allow it to infiltrate in place where it falls as much as possible. So, to the extent that you can, if you have a single family home or if you own a business, to be able to transform your landscape so that it captures and holds that water, either through rain barrels, but hopefully through sort of dry beds or some other nature-based solutions. I think the key for us is really to try to keep that water out of our storm drain systems as much as possible. And then I think your other question is the solar. You know, it'd be interesting to see if we could do it in LA. We're doing it on some of the on the State Water Project, putting solar in certain areas to offset some of the cost of what it takes to pump that water down here. It's not, you know, it's certainly an interesting idea.
Sorry, to come back to what I meant is not to take out the sides of the channel, but the bottom, just the you know, the one, the ground. Is there any plans that this can be done with near Atwater? Trees are growing there.
Yeah. I mean, I know Metabolic Studio is doing some really cool stuff with, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Lauren Bond's work at Metabolic Studio. She has excavated about 100 yards of the LA River, and they're doing some work, but that's, you know, that's a certainly different project. But my understanding is it was pretty challenging to get the permits to be able to do that. I think because of the way in which we've siloed our the different agencies that touch water, and having flood control manage the river is, you know, it just makes it really, really challenging to do something for infiltration when their sole focus and mission is preventing floods. But, you know, doesn't mean we shouldn't try for it.
All right, we're going to move on to Andrew now.
Thanks so much. Tracy, there's a bill moving through Assembly Bill 1407, the ocean protection. We're very concerned at the LA chapter about protecting our coastline from oil and gas exploration. This establishment of Assembly Bill 1407 of the Ocean Protection Council, can you briefly talk a little bit about legislative initiatives from Heal the Bay that we can know about, that we can support you or help you folks push stuff in the legislative area?
Sure. I mean, right now we only have, I believe, one sponsored Heal bill its way through legislation. That's AB 1572. Also from Assemblymember Friedman. I heard you talk about AB 1573 before. 1572 bans the use of drinking water on non-functional turf. So grass that's in front of a McDonald's or in a parkway that's using an incredible amount of water. We definitely could use some help. The misinformation campaign started last week. And I'll actually be flying up to Sacramento to lobby on that bill on Tuesday to try to address that. So address those that misinformation campaign. But certainly, if you want to reach out to folks in the Senate, we're on the Senate side, hoping to get out of Senate appropriations. Would be great for some of our senators to hear from you.
Our chapter's already on record as being in support of those legislation.
We recently passed another bill that will change how fisheries are, or it changes fines for fisheries to help them enforce people who are fishing in marine protected areas. So, but that has already been signed by the governor. But I can certainly keep you all in the loop as different legislative things come through. I think that we're expecting more locally some opportunities to weigh in on Measure W, and certainly would love to keep you all in the loop to help you weigh in.
Yeah, please do that. I just want to emphasize that our strength is not organizational, power, because we're an all-volunteer organization at the local chapter level. But where we can be useful is as an ally, because we can be very nimble. We don't have to have 2 months worth of meetings before we decide whether or not to take in a position on something. And so if there are things where you need a quick response and you need an extra push, please reach out to us to be a collaborator and a supporter of what you're doing, because I think our missions are wholly compatible generally. So we definitely want to support when we can. Let's move on to Elisa.
Hi there, thank you. Can you guys hear me all right?
We can.
Great. new first-hand headphones. I have a question regarding what can be done at the local level, or what Heal the Bay or the Met suggests can be done at the local level, whether it be stormwater capture or other environmental projects. Specifically with local government, I know stormwater capture is mainly done through state levels, but if there's anything that can be done at the local level, I'd love to know a model for that, so we could replicate it in smaller cities. I know I just moved to a small city that has a good history of environmental sustainability, especially with their state local government passing bills and creating legislation for it. And so if there's anything I could get involved with in that way, I'd love to be aware of it.
That's great. Yeah, there are a lot of things to help with local water reliability that local cities and local water agencies have a lot of control over. One of them is water efficiency programs. And so using a drop that's saved is the sort of the best drop of investment you can get. So, and water efficiency is the cheapest and fastest way for us to close that gap between supply and demand. So cities and water and incentive programs, making sure that those are well crafted so that everyone can access them. The big problem with rebate and incentive programs for water efficiency is generally only middle class or wealthy people can access them, because you often have to front the cost of whatever you're doing and then wait weeks or sometimes months to get a rebate. Not everyone can do that. What we're advocating for now is for water agencies and cities to do direct install programs where they will pay for everything, come out to a home and change out your toilet or your faucet or your shower, and even your landscape now. So we're continuing to advocate for agencies to think about doing that instead, to make sure that their programs are more equitable. Stormwater is the same way. Stormwater here a lot in LA County, a lot of the funding is coming from LA County through Measure W, but water agencies are also able to invest in those things as well. What makes it kind of tough for water agencies to invest in stormwater capture is that they're not necessarily seeing the benefit, but stormwater capture could be really interesting if you go to, the agencies that are dealing with extreme heat. I think it's a huge opportunity for money from Parks and Rec to come in to build, Heal the Bay right now is working to build a stormwater park in South Los Angeles, and we're using a lot of Park and Rec money for that. You can bring in pollution prevention money, so money that's being that's set aside for MS4 compliance or other, pollution reduction monies. Finding areas to co-fund, so advocating for that. That all happens at the local level. So bringing together these folks from different entities and making sure that they're working together can make these projects a lot more affordable. I hope that answers your question.
Definitely
Andy,
did.
you're
Thank
up.
you so much.
Thanks. So you did touch on this, and I apologize, but since you are more of an expert than any of us on this call, can you describe what you think would be the most impactful way to actually achieve water security? And you did provide some examples of ways to collaborate, but what do you think is some of the most impactful things that Climate Reality could do to help heal the Bay? And do you have any of your initiatives listed that anyone on this call or others can see, these are things that people could prioritize if they value and have the same values and mission that Heal the Bay have?
Sure. I mean, there's one thing that's going on, right? It's about to kick off on October 4th. The State Water Board is kicking off its water efficiency standards rulemaking. So the state is going to be setting standards for the efficient use of water. And these are going to be used by water agencies to set objectives. There are 3 components to the water efficiency standards. One is indoor water efficiency. That's a number that was set by the legislature. Then there is outdoor water efficiency. And the State Water Board has just released its proposal for that. And then there's a water loss standard, which is how much water are water agencies allowed to lose, was an efficient loss of water through their distribution system. And so, for those of you that don't know, at any given time, a water agency is losing somewhere between 3 and 25% of the drinking water through leaks and breaks in its system. And so, right, the last component that needs to be established is, what is the outdoor water use standard going to be? And we're advocating for the state board to adopt what the staff has proposed, which is a little bit more strict than what their sister agency, the Department of Water Resources, recommended. It's getting some pushback. And so what we're trying to do is to get a broader group of stakeholders, especially if you know, if you're involved or if you know people who are involved in landscaping or landscape transformations. We were trying to be able to share with the State Water Board that the standard that's being proposed, which is, this is going to sound really wonky if you're not into irrigation efficiencies, but the standard is 55% of evapotranspiration. So basically, it's enough water to have a landscape that has 25% grass and 75% more native landscape or climate resilient landscape. That's what we think, you know, should be set as the standard, is the minimum. It's getting a lot of pushback. They're saying that it's going to cause urban blight. So we need folks to weigh in to say this is plenty of water for the type of landscapes that we need to have in California. And also, you know, noting that how much water a landscape uses is only one piece of it, that we also need to make sure that we're maintaining healthy soils, that we have, you know, native landscapes that are going to allow for biodiversity. But that this is going to be the piece that really engages the water agencies in how do we transform these landscapes into these nature-based multi-benefit solutions. I think you also had probably another part of that question, but if you can repeat it all.
Oh yeah, no, it was complicated. So that you did highlight one of the things that's most important. I guess in the future, do you or will Heal the Bay have a lot of these things on their website that Climate Reality can point to, or ways that we can say these are effective things that our collaborators or partners recommend to really, again, achieve water security, which is what I keep advocating?
Yeah, so we're in the middle of a strategic planning process right now, and so we're going to be revamping our website. So yes, we will plan to have more things on our website on things that we're working on, and try to stay connected so that, you know, we can call you all in when things are happening.
Perfect. Thank you, Charles, and thank you, Tracy.
Absolutely. And I'm going to follow up with you just based on your answer on that, because you're right in my wheelhouse there in terms of stuff I want to help with. So we can talk later about that. But I'll now go to Hannah. You're up.
Okay, so do you know which city in Southern California is the most water efficient?
Oh, right now I don't know. Santa Monica used to do a really good job. Generally, lower income cities are more water efficient. And so, you know, that's, you know, where you can, I mean, that's sort of the trend that you can normally look to. Wealthier cities are generally areas that have larger landscapes, and aren't paying super close attention to their water bill. So there's no price incentive for their rates. I will say that the city of Los Angeles right now has some of the best programming for water efficiency. They offer the highest rebates for landscape transformations, and they take advantage of the sort of co-funding programs from Metropolitan Water District better than any other agency in Southern California. But I can help, you know, there's the State Water Resources Control Board publishes water conservation data. The most water agencies have to report it monthly, and you can look up to see how efficient, what sort of the per capita water use is of every water agency in the state. And there's like 483 of them.
Okay, thank you.
That was a fun question. Okay, we've just got a little bit of time left, so I'm going to ask the people asking questions to keep them succinct and tight if you can, to give us a chance to go with a couple more questions. Allison, you have your hand up since you haven't asked a question yet. I'm going to go with you.
Hi, good evening, everyone, and thanks for the talk. I had two questions. One question is, I know at least a while back, I'm not sure if they still do, MWG was subsidizing AstroTurf as a turf replacement strategy. And so I wanted to know what your thoughts are on that in terms of water savings versus plastic pollution. Like, you know, what are the trade-offs there? And then also I had a question about native plants, because you know, I agree with you, they're a multi-benefit solution, but at least in my experience, getting them started maybe even sustaining them just in our heat here does still require water. So I'm just wondering, like, what kind of research have you seen about, about like maybe startup versus long-term savings, and like for people who would like think, okay, well, I could save on my water bill, they still have to have that initial cost up front, or maybe they still have to like install an irrigation system to ensure the sustainability and health of those gardens. So what's your advice on that? So I'm sorry, those are two pretty specific questions, and I'll try to keep it to that since I know we're out of time.
Well, can you remind me what your first question was? I'm sorry.
Pros and cons of AstroTurf and the
yes.
MWD subsidy.
I hate fake turf. I would rather see a huge green lawn than fake grass. I've been doing more and more research into fake turf. I really wanted to run legislation this year that would allow cities to ban fake turf, which they are no longer allowed to do since Governor Brown put that prohibition in. And I know Senator Allen had that legislation this year. I haven't seen it recently. I heard it may have changed, but the last time I saw it, it still was allowing cities to ban fake turf, which I'm really excited about. So I don't think that rebates or incentives should be used for fake turf. I'm glad to see that some of the fake turf industry is moving away from PFAS. But I still am concerned about heat island impact from fake turf, what it does to the soil health, obviously that it's made with plastics. I think there are just a number of problems with fake turf that make it problematic. And then to your second question, I'm so sorry, my memory is shot today.
I was asking about irrigation requirements for native. Like and long term.
General understanding that almost anything that you put, any living plant that you're going to put in, if you, especially, if you're tearing out landscape, is going to require some water to get going, and often is going to require some irrigation to maintain. I think if you're really turbocharged about saving water and you can do this where you live, there's gray water systems you could use, laundry to landscape, to supplement your irrigation. But generally, I think the benefits of having a healthy living landscape and healthy soils, the healthier your soils are, the more water they're going to retain, the less irrigation water you're going to need. So really focusing on maintaining soil health will help to offset your water needs in the future. And I think if you're familiar with sort of Pamela Bursler and the Green Garden Group and some of their work, yes, composting, all of those things help. I think that they have a lot of great resources on, what does a healthy landscape look like? And how can you have a living landscape that requires less water going forward? And I think the key to it is soil health.
Allison, come to our biodiversity committee. We talk about all this stuff all the time, and we can do deep dives on all those issues. I'm going to do one more question. I appreciate that there's so much interest. That's just an indication of how great our guest is this evening, but we do have other stuff. Melanie, if you can make it really quick, you're going to get the last question because everybody else has already asked one. Sorry, Karen and Andy, I appreciate the input.
Thanks. Hey, Tracy.
Hey, Melanie.
So Adele and Metropolitan Water District has for years talked a lot about One Water, and everybody talks about using all the tools in the toolbox. What I don't see is a transparency budget-wise and investment-wise about which tools we're investing in and how much. So you can say we need an all of the above strategy, but that can mean 99 out of $100 goes to one of those tools, and the other dollar is split up between everything else. And I feel like that's really important. Because you can talk about how important stormwater is, but if you're only investing $1.50 in it, it makes it tough to achieve. What do you think the odds are of getting Metropolitan to perhaps create a hierarchy of investments, or at a minimum first step, to have some transparency in their budgeting by kind of water solution.
Oh no, I've lost my
I terrified
Sorry.
you and you turned
No.
your camera off. Cool.
my internet says it's unstable now. So
Oh, okay. And I'm in the dark.
I'll just turn my video off for a second and see if this helps. But I would say, well, the good news is, Melanie, that I am the chair of the One Water Committee, and I now control my committee. Does all of the planning for all of the different water supplies. So I think our chances are pretty good that there'll be more transparency going forward. I think you're absolutely right. We can't have an all above the strategy because we don't have enough money to do everything. We need to focus on prioritize on the things that are most important. Met is embarking on a climate adaptation master planning, which is going to help to inform what we invest in. And that's being led by Liz Crossan, who, came from, Liz, Melanie, from the mayor's office and before the Waterkeeper. So we have a really great champion in Liz to lead that work. I think that it's going to, I'm really optimistic about how we can pivot Met towards larger investments in local reliability going forward, because it's going to make sense financially. It's going to make sense from a reliability standpoint. We can't, a business model that relies on selling a product that is diminishing over time is not one that's going to that makes sense for much longer. So Met has to change, and I think that you're going to see a lot more transparency in what we're investing in, and please come to the call in to the meetings and engage and share your thoughts on what you think our committee and Met should be doing.
Yeah, I think you get a lot more participation if people could actually could see very clearly. Like even when you talk about local reliability, that could mean almost all of the money going to reclaimed water.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. So people need to be really clear about what we're saying and where the dollars are going, so that they can weigh in on what they think is important and what their feedback is.
That's really good feedback. I will make sure that we are doing a better job of that at Met, and certainly we can bring some of that to my committee.
Thanks.
Thanks, Melanie.
Tracy, I think we've come to that time. Thank you so much for being here this evening, and we just couldn't appreciate more having you here and the insights that you brought to everybody. And we hope that we are able to continue to support your work and collaborate with you and your organization and future organizations. Just really appreciate the work that you're doing, and thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And if anyone has any dying questions, Charles can share my email. I just really appreciated the opportunity to chat with you all. You had great questions, and it's really exciting to see such an incredible group of people coming together for this fight. So thank you.
Back at you, kiddo.